Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. And of course, you good old boys up in Canada. I know Canada's playing the United States and some softball competition, so good luck to both of those contestants. But I do want to say Big C Sports has been growing even more so in Australia, as well as the Russian Republic, maybe because Putin has everybody tap Big C, or so he's tapping into the program as well. But I also want to thank Ireland for following Big C Sports. And of course, you good old boys down south, there's nobody I love more than all you good old boys down south in the land of the free. Big C, how's everybody doing? Are you over with the post 4th of July hangover, Big C? Your thoughts?
I'm still lounging around here, and I still haven't been able to pull up my pants, over my stomach. So hopefully in a couple of days all this swelling will subside, and we can get back to some normalcy down here. But, the only thing we look forward to is everything getting wet down here in the south. If it's not a wet glass with moonshine, then it's the lawn being wet from the rain.
Well, you guys can definitely send some of that rain out of here to California. It's 100 degrees again in California, so everybody was talking about, we're glad that the drought is over, but I guess Mother Nature decides to go into another heat wave in California. But I do want to say today's segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, I just want to touch off a little bit. I know we started yesterday about college football because I know get down there in Alabama. I don't know if the SEC sanctions you boys at all, but how does Nick Saban run practice 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Do they use like a treadmill or some type of assembly line? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's called to be able to afford paying your power bills. The lights on.
Yeah.
And with Nick Saban and all the boosters down at Alabama, they don't have a problem paying the light bill. But for that very reason, you get all these top flight athletes who want to come there and participate.
Yeah.
They come there, and you think about what Nick Saban has done, Charlton, in his time at Alabama.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a greater run in college football history than what Nick Saban has done?
No.
I mean, his standard of excellence is winning a championship, and that's what everybody gauges him on, is winning a championship, not the success that he has during the regular season, because Nick Saban has not lost more than 2 games in a season in the last 7 seasons, Charlton.
That's incredible.
And so if he does that, people talk about, Alabama had a failed season.
Yeah.
But, you look around the country at the college programs, regardless of the conference that you want to look at, and see who has equaled the success of Nick Saban over the last 7 years, Charlton. It's been unparalleled.
And Big C, something else, we make fun of the SEC. A lot of people do. They say it's a conference. It's a conference. It's really minor league football. It's semi-pro football because we know their programs are built different. There's no doubt if you go to the SEC, there's a different kind of coaching that goes along as compared to, let's say, even the Big Ten. The Big Ten has 19 schools, but when you only talk about the Big Ten, you really look at Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, maybe Michigan State, that have pro-caliber programs year after year. You can say every other year, maybe you find a Penn State, maybe you find an Illinois, or maybe you even find someone like Rutgers. I don't even know why they're in the Big 10 or the Big 19. But I want to just bring this point up to you, because what we say so much about Alabama, a lot of coaches say how they get the top athletes. But you believe, St. Nick, the highest paid coach in college football, if you look at the academic progress rate score, out of 1,000, Big C, from 2012 to 2016, I'm proud of St. Nick because I did not know this. They have the rate for their schools at 980, which means that they have more in the last 4 seasons than any team in the country, whatever the academic progress rate is. It just means that kids are going to class. I know a lot of kids get knocked for not going to school. I know LSU had a basketball player back in the day, didn't even touch campus from what I understand, but that plagues the SEC, that image. But I do want to congratulate Nick Saban, even though we say, and you started this about a year ago, you said, ask these coaches their graduation rate. Big C, I'm going to confess ignorance. I don't know what an academic progress rate is. It doesn't say diploma, but it is a progress rate. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think when they look at progress is that they're getting that percentage of people attending class. I don't know. No one has ever talked about the graduation rate.
Exactly.
Which is going to be the hardest thing to track. I mean, you can throw up as you and your young people talk about analytics anytime you want.
Yeah.
But I'm one of the old school guys that talk about realistics. Forget analytics, give me realistics.
Yeah.
And I can recognize what realistics is, and that's the real numbers. And that's something you never get from any of these college programs. The only real number you get is how much a head coach is making.
Yeah.
That's about it. But we've always looked at the graduation rate.
Yeah.
The success and the non-success of it at these major universities, because we're looking at milling factories, basically, Charlton, nowadays in college athletics.
That's a good point.
When you're seeing, even on the football field where guys are leaving after their sophomore and junior year.
Yeah.
So they're not graduating on time. Let's throw that out of the equation. And so you got to basically attend college for 5 years on average as a football player, or even a basketball player, with the amount of time you have to put into practice and traveling to be able to graduate. You're not going to generally graduate on time in that 4 years with your class. There is a rare exception, Jonathan, that can do that. But I'm going to say 90% of the people who attend college on an athletic scholarship don't have the ability to graduate on time with their classes.
Yeah.
But, we can look back and forth across the ledger, but college athletics, Jonathan, it's not about academics. I don't care what people say.
Yep, you're right.
It never has been about academics. You don't go out and recruit a guy because he's an academic standard unless you're at Stanford, where you have to be accepted in school before you can accept a scholarship.
Yes.
There's different levels of academia when it comes to college athletics.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you never hear these top flight recruiting programs on ESPN when they're talking about the top 100, the Pepper Dandies, and the Elite Eight, all of this, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're talking about a guy's height, his wingspan, his 40 time, his vertical leap. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a cattle auction that they're talking about. They're not talking about the brain surgeon that they can graduate. They're not talking about Tamari Rolle, who played at Florida State, who is now a doctor, who was a Rhodes Scholar, who gave up the NFL for a profession that would last him a lifetime. He's a brain surgeon now.
Yeah.
This was an African-American defensive back that played at Florida State. These are the type of athletes that they don't talk about because it messes up the criteria that they set about of the dumb jock.
Yeah.
Not the Rhodes Scholar, the dumb jock. Your buddy Pat Hayden, when he was there at USC, he was a Rhodes Scholar, quarterback.
Yeah.
So we've had a plethora of great athletes and have had great minds, but the sports world doesn't want to talk about that. They only want to talk about their 40, their vertical leap, and their bench press, Charles.
And Big C, I want to bring up something, because that's a very good thing you brought up with the Rhodes Scholars, and of course one of them at USC, the great Pat Hayden. I want to say one thing about Nick Saban that sets him apart. Outside of the $11+ million, Big C, that sets a lot of people apart, especially when your guys are working for free and some Gatorade and a T-shirt, Big C. But I do want to say that Nick Saban quotes that his program, he runs it Alabama like an NFL franchise, except for the part where you get paid. Okay, maybe he overspoke, Big C, but he said.
He didn't say they weren't getting paid. He just said they weren't on the payroll. There's a difference between getting paid and being on the payroll. There's been years of that in America.
Well, you wonder how they get the top recruiting class every year throughout the country, and he says, I run it like an NFL program, and I think NFL, they pay all their athletes, from what I understand. I was kind of reading between the lines, but I understand that. But I do want to touch on a little bit more of college football, because it's so exciting, and so many players, when they wake up and have a consciousness, they'll realize that it's just free work. It's almost like Jim Crow, because most of them won't get a pro scholarship. But something has happened in the world. I was talking with an attorney friend of mine, and we were talking about the world of sports and how it's $1 billion industry, and black talent is the reason that it's worth $1 billion in nearly every sport. If you look at the enrollments for the college programs, you look at the top 25 teams, almost all of them are dominated by the African-American athlete. That's just a fact. And the majority of those athletes will never get a chance to coach at that school that they helped make $100 million for. That's also a fact. I want to run down just the top 10 programs, Big C, and we're going to cover the top 4 and how they're already positioned for a national championship. There's many different, polls out there and different scouts. Number 1, Alabama, is number 2, Ohio State. You have number 3, Florida State. Number 4, Southern California, followed by Oklahoma. Clemson at number 6, Penn State 7, LSU 8, Wisconsin 9, and then you have Oklahoma State 10. You talked about how great their quarterback passing is down there. Big C, I want to get your thoughts historically. When you look at college football, and you've been covering it like nobody has over the years, Big C. I look at Ohio State's schedule. Their non-league schedule. Are they ready for a national championship run? They're playing Indiana, They play in Oklahoma, and then Army. Okay, Indiana's in their conference, but you have Oklahoma, Army, and UNLV. Those are the top 4 games, their first 4 games, and 3 of their non-conference games are ripe for the pickings for a national championship run if they get past Oklahoma. Your thoughts on adding Army and UNLV to come to the Horseshoe, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, those schedules were laid out half a decade to a decade ago. They just didn't get laid out this last off season.
Yeah.
So, you play the schedule that you're giving, but, we've seen where Ohio State has been knocked off before by lesser opponents, in their preseason warm-ups, as they say. But, I'm against the preseason college rankings. I don't think that a ranking in college football should come out until week 7.
Yeah.
That's the way that you've gotten the wheat from the shaft, Charlton. Everybody has played a decent amount of games, and you know where people lie at that point. Then you can come out with a true ranking instead of this fictorial ranking, Charlton, that they have, where they've already slated teams to be where they are. You get 2 of those teams get knocked off in the top 4.
Yeah.
Where are they going to fall? They're not going to fall out of the top 10, Charlton. That's just what's going to happen to them. They've already been slated that they can stay in the top 10. That's why you should not have a ranking, a national football ranking in college football until after week 7 of the regular season. You're playing 13 games now, Charlton.
Yeah.
You still have 6 weeks of jockeying to decide who's going to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
But you can easily lay out when you have, after 7 weeks, and you have 12 undefeated teams, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's 1 through 12 slating. You can't have a team with a defeat in the top 10. It's unfair to the rest of those universities and athletes who go out and compete week after week, and you go undefeated during the regular season, as we see every year. There's always 1 or 2 teams that go undefeated, Charlton. They have a late season loss, and they fall out of the rankings. Yet they say if a team loses early, it's a positive loss because now they have a chance to move up, which I feel, you handicap those teams who have fought for 10, 12 weeks, Charlton, and stayed undefeated.
Well, as one of my attorney friends said, the rankings is not for the fans. The rankings for Las Vegas, and the fans follow Las Vegas in the betting. Because if everyone knows that, for example, if you look at what happened to Urban Meyer, he's 61-6 in 6 seasons. That's a very excellent winning percentage. If you look at the number 2 team, number 1 and number 2, depending on what poll, Alabama, if you look at their non-conference, obviously they have a dandy opening up with Florida State down in Atlanta at the gorgeous Mercedes-Benz Dome. Somebody has some money down in Georgia, big to see them good old boys. Arthur Blank, gorgeous stadium, right next door to the look like decrepit 20-year-old Georgia Dome, big C. Looks like a small friend to that one. And then you look at Alabama's schedule, Florida State, Fresno State, and then Colorado State. They're going to the Mountain West for 2 of their first 3 games. Obviously, Alabama hasn't lost more than 2 games in a season in several years, Big C. That schedule looks like Fresno State's rebuilding. Colorado State, no match. It's almost like after the Florida State game, 2 practice games for Nick Saban. That's 1-19 and 19-11 seasons. Are they set also for another national championship run? It seems like it doesn't matter who they play. They're going to be in the thick anyway, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're going to outman those teams, Fresno State, Colorado State. You're going to pay them to come all the way back to the southeast to take a butt whipping.
Yeah.
Basically, is what's going to go on. They're going to come to a climate of humidity.
Yeah.
It's going to be in the 90s. The humidity will be in the low 90s, if not the high 80s.
Yeah.
And Alabama will run out 3-4 different teams of players in rotation and just wear these teams down. We see that over the years when you bring in these lesser-ranked conference teams, Charlton, and you do it basically for a tune-up.
Yeah.
You don't do it to lose. You do it for a tune-up to get your team healthy, to get a look at some players that may not be starters, to see how they're going to be in competitive action in live game drills, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, this is what the big boys can afford to do. You can pay a Fresno State or Colorado State $750,000 to $1 million to come out and do that.
Yeah.
They have to take those games to keep those conferences strong, Charlton. You think about the gate that Alabama will have for a home football game, $3-4 million, Charlton.
Yeah.
You're going to get that all season long at Fresno State and Colorado State.
Yeah.
That's going to be their gate all year long at home. So to take that $1 million payday from Alabama and other big schools who bring in these lesser universities, Charlton, to compete and not compete, to hold a scrimmage against. Basically, that's all you're doing is holding a scrimmage.
That's very true.
And you bring them in, and it's good for the home fans, but think about how demoralizing it is for teams of Fresno. I'm going to believe that trip's got to be at least 2,000 miles going to Tuscaloosa to fly out to Tuscaloosa, Charlton, to be demoralized on a 2 to 3 day trip, turn around and go back to California and try to get ready for your next game, and hopefully you don't have any major injuries, Charlton.
Well, Jeff Teffer's crazy. Fresno State, not only are they flying Alabama, the next week they're flying up to Seattle, Washington to take on the Huskies, two teams that were in the Final Four last year. So good luck, Fresno State, and I'm sure they're going to enjoy the money. And none of the kids get that money because he's all for the school. The number 3 program, Florida State, Jimbo Fisher, 78-17 in 8 seasons. Big C, the non-league schedule. Of course, Alabama in that beautiful Mercedes-Benz Dome down in Georgia. And then they have Louisiana Monroe. I didn't even know they played football at Monroe. And then they play Miami, Florida. Now, that's more of a national championship type of schedule because they're going to knock off 2 teams that can compete, at least for their conference championships. So credit Jimbo Fisher. The great Bobby Bowden always had great athletes down there. You talked about one of the Rhodes Scholars they've had down at Florida State. It just seems like this is the type of game that's a national championship type of game when you look at the schedule and you look at the tradition of these top programs. Florida State and Alabama, that's must-see TV. Of course, they're going to be ranked in the top 3 or 4. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about it, Charlton, both of those schools have 2 of the top sophomore quarterbacks in the country, in Hurd in Alabama and Francois down at Florida State.
Yeah.
Both of these kids had phenomenal freshman campaigns on the college football level. And so they're early Heisman considered candidates also, Charlton, when you think about the productivity.
Yeah.
Hurd played all the way to the national championship team. He's 2 plays away from winning a national championship. You know, Francois passed for over 4,000 yards as a freshman at Florida State. Took a big beating. He's going to need some improvement from his offensive line. He lost his top running back in Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
So he's going to need a running back and a little bit of help on the offensive line. But both of these guys showed excellent promise, Charlton. And you think about it, they're both young African-American quarterbacks, but your buddy out there, Jake Browning, not Jake Browning, but Sam Donald at USC, got more publicity than these guys who started all year long, Charlton.
Yeah.
And did such a phenomenal job. As a matter of fact, he's getting even more publicity than Jake Browning up at the University of Washington, who's been a 3-year starter now, 2-year starter?
Yeah, 2-year starter. Yeah.
Pac-12 records out there.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all about the hype that, you know, the media can put on an individual. And when I look at the kid Donald, Charlton,
Yeah.
you know, this kid has only started 10 college games.
Yeah.
He doesn't have enough of a body of work to be effective. And people projecting him as potentially the first pick in the NFL draft.
I think it's too early.
Let me give you a little history on the NFL draft and quarterbacks, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody drafts a quarterback, talk about a franchise quarterback, all right?
Yeah.
They're looking for somebody to build a cornerstone with to get them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
There has not been a quarterback, Charlton, that has played in the Super Bowl that did not go through his senior year in college, okay?
Wow.
Just plain and simple. There's not been a quarterback that has gone out there and won the Super Bowl. I take that back. Trent Dilfer left as a junior.
No, he didn't win. That was defense.
He didn't play quarterback. You know, he just took snaps.
Yeah, Fresno State, yeah.
But that's the only one, Charlton. When you look at these other quarterbacks that have been successful, that teams have built their organizations around.
Yeah.
Even the losing quarterbacks, Charlton, have been starters in college.
Yeah.
And they've all played at least 35 starts as college quarterbacks.
That's a good point.
So they've done at least 3 years. So
Yeah.
Unless you've gotten that maturity and repetition on the college level, it doesn't make any difference about the preseason hype. And when you go around and you look how many of these preseason hype early, you know, entries into the NFL are now out there trying to get a job on the unemployment line, something.
Yeah.
That list is longer than quarterbacks that have gone to the Super Bowl.
Big C, that's a very good point. And I still say I've yet to see a quarterback. I mean, I've seen a lot of good ones, especially out here on the West Coast because of the passing conference. But when I saw Vince Young, what he did to Michigan in the Rose Bowl back in 2004, and then he did it to USC in the Rose Bowl back in 2005 and won the national championship. And Vince Young has been so maligned throughout the league because they just didn't want that. I think he was 36-19 as a starter and can't get a job in the NFL. You have guys that have won 7 games in 12 years, Big C, and they still get an NFL roster. So obviously there's a bias. But I bring up this point, too, and I'm glad you brought it up. It just seemed like for the African-American quarterback that wants to be treated like they're white, NFL teams are not looking for the great black hope. They're not looking for the guy that can stand in the pocket and roll outside of the pocket. They're not looking for the next Cam Newton. They're not looking for the next Russell Wilson, even though both of those guys went to Super Bowls. They're not looking for a Doug Williams. They're looking for someone Caucasian that they can say, this is our hope. They still want that white figure in the back behind the center. And I'm just saying that because we talk about the billion-dollar industry that's made college football. And most of the top teams have black players. About 80% of the starters are African-American. Now, even looking deeper than that, Big C, about 80% of the top teams in the Final Four, they're black. They're led by black quarterbacks. That's just a fact over the past 10 years. So even if you're considered a top college kid, if you're African-American, there's no need in trying to come out early because they're going to marginalize you. They don't want you to be the star guy in the NFL. Unless you're a dumb person, you just look at history. It's shown us that. I want to finish up one more program because they are my favorite program, Big C, even though I think they were, I'm just going to say flippantly, they were drugged down there when they played Alabama last year. They drank some Gatorade that tasted nothing like Gatorade. Lynn Swann should have been fired for letting them do that Southern hospitality. Next time, bring your own Gatorade. Florida State, bring your own Gatorade when you play Alabama. But I do want to say the great USC Trojans, Clay Helton's their coach, had a hard time even getting the job until they went off on a winning streak. And Big C, he's 16-7 in his career at USC. I think they found the right guy. USC is a hotbed of talent. But look at their schedule. Western Michigan, and then they play Stanford and Texas, as well as Notre Dame for the non-league. You know, Stanford's always competing to win the Pac-12, but David Shaw doesn't get the same type of accolades as a head coach in the world of college football. I think Western Michigan played Wisconsin last year in a bowl game, so they are starting out with a team that had a one-in-a-lifetime season. But Stanford obviously is a tough win for USC. If you look at the Texas game, Texas is rebuilding. Even though they got rid of Charlie Strong, I think they got rid of him too early. But that has an eye candy to it, Big C. That's why it's such a big game. Just talk about Southern California and their scheduling for the positioning of a national championship run, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, playing Texas is a revisiting of that championship game that they had in the Rose Bowl, Charlton, a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so that will rekindle some interest.
Yeah.
But they have the new coach in Tom Herman that came over from the University of Houston, Charlton. He's in a rebuilding mode, just like Brian Kelly at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He's in a rebuilding mode. So, you know, you got Kelly who's on the hot seat, who's one of the coaches who may lose his job this year on a major level.
Wow.
And you got Tom Herman, who has a pass for the next 4 or 5 years at the University of Texas.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you think about Stanford and USC, that's always been a tough ticket for USC.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about the type of coach David Shaw is and the type of smash-mouth football that he plays when USC wants to play that finesse game, he out-muscles USC. And he's always found a quarterback that can get it done. You know, they don't come in with great accolades. They just win because of the intelligence that they have there at Stanford. And David Shaw is a tremendous coach who never really gets any look on the Pac-12, Charlton.
Yeah.
As a head coach, when you think about lesser coaches who move about in college and go into professional football, Charlton, not many of them can compare to David Shaw what he's done. When you look at the players that he has to work with, when we talk about academics on the college level, Charlton, there's no other coach that has to work with less than what David Shaw does when we talk about the elite athletes in the country. Because he has to bring in the elite minds, Charlton, is what he has to do. The elite athletic minds are the only ones that qualify at Stanford. So you're not going to see the top 100 athletes going to Stanford, Charlton, just for sake.
That's a very good point.
When you think about what he gets out of these athletes, Charlton, because of their intelligence, they follow the instruction, they follow the script to the T that the coaching staff at Stanford lays out. That's what gives Stanford and David Shaw an advantage, is the intelligence of the athletes that they have, Charlton. And they have great athletes. But the intelligence is above and beyond everyone else that they compete against.
Yeah, and they're in the top 12 coming into that. So obviously, those are the top 4 teams so far based on what poll. But we're looking at how they position for a national championship. And as my lawyer friend said, the rankings are strictly for Las Vegas. Because we're going to watch traditional games. We're going to watch traditional teams because it's in our subconscious mind. But when someone's putting their money on the line on who they're going to bet for, they don't care if a team's ranked. They just want to make sure they're betting on teams that have a chance to win. And so if a team's ranked number 7 in the country playing the number 3 team, that's going to draw in more money than if those 2 teams are not ranked at all, Big C. And that's why the rankings will always be the preseason rankings, and they can always change them on a weekly basis. I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. When you play sports, you need athletic and event insurance. We go through Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century, Big C. When you reach out to them, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you and maybe get a special deal out of that. Big C, I want to touch off on something that's also important out here on the West Coast. Outside of needing some water, we need some more rain. We got to do a rain dance or something. I want to say one of the most dominant pitchers, and he always gets beaten up when it comes to the playoffs. But Clayton Kershaw, he's done 13 wins for the first time for a Dodger since Oral Hershiser did it 29 years ago when the Dodgers went on and won the World Series. Are we looking at another coming of Oral Hershiser and Clayton Kershaw if they can keep him healthy? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's had a problem the last couple of years late in the season being healthy.
Yeah.
But also when you get to the playoffs, Charlton, you're playing a quality team every game. You know, you go through your season and you think about the conference that the Dodgers are in. There's not many strong teams in the West. You know, the Dodgers are having a down year. The Padres really haven't done much to challenge. So you're playing a lot of games within the conference, Charlton, of teams that are not competitive, which are going to give you an advantage when it comes to record.
Yeah.
But when you get to the playoffs, Charlton, you don't play any weak opponent.
No.
You know, every night you're playing a playoff caliber team. And so that's where the true challenges come for Kershaw. And that cold weather pitching, you think about it, his record has been great when the weather's hot in the last 3 years at the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And as the weather has changed into the fall, Charlton, and that hunt for red October, you know, he slowed down a little bit. I mean, he had a great series against the Mets last year, Charlton, in the NLCS.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to being consistent in the cold weather, he's just not gotten it done.
Yeah, and that's a challenge out there. So obviously the Dodgers need to get the home cooking. Right now they're sitting at 57-29. They won at home 35-11 at home. On the road, you're right, they can be had. They're only 22-18 on the road. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. And I think they have everything that it takes to get it at home. If they can do that, they're leading the Diamondbacks by 4.5 games at 52-33. The Rockies, they always fade no matter what their record is. They're 50-38. The Padres with a brand new stadium down there, pretty much Petco's brand new, and that's not enough to help them win. They're 36-48. And the Giants, the darlings of the West over the past several seasons, are 34-53. So obviously Bochy has a lot to do making up for the West with the if they're going to compete against the Dodgers, it's going to have to be next year, and some change is going to happen. We know that that's always a team that you have to account for, but they're just having a bad run this year. And a team that's kind of surprising and not sexy at all. The Milwaukee Brewers are 48-40 in the Central, followed by last year's Big C championship winners. What's going on with the Chicago Cubs? They're only 40-43 on the season, Big C. Are they having a hangover after taking 108 years? Or they decide they can take a break this year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, it's hard to go back-to-back winning 100 games in Major League Baseball. And also when you're in the World Series championship, and you think about it, have we had a repeater in the last 5 years in Major League Baseball?
No.
As the World Series championship? Every team has fallen off, Charlton, the following years. Well, where's the Kansas City Royals last year?
Yeah.
Where were the Giants the year before that? You know, when you think about these teams winning the World Series and have this hangover, I think nowadays with so much media and interest in players after they win a championship, Charlton, it's hard to keep a player out of the spotlight. And so you have a lot of demand on the star players' time.
Yeah.
And so that leadership role has been diminished with a lot of these professional organizations because they get caught up in the hoopla.
Yeah.
And who does not want to bask in the fame of winning a championship, Charlton? You want to make all the television and radio and personal appearances that you can.
Yeah.
And so these players do that, and their work ethic will suffer during that time when they may have been in the gym, they may have been, you know, working on their position.
Yeah.
They are not doing that because they're on the road making these appearances. And so when you look at the Cubs, the demand that was put on the Cubs, Charlton, after winning the World Series, after all of those years, I think you were probably a teenager the last time they won. So, you know, that really hurt the organization. They just didn't get a chance to concentrate. It's just like the Kansas City Chiefs the year before. It had been a couple of decades since they had won a World Series.
Yeah.
So that celebration had not stopped.
Yeah.
And so now we look at the Cubs, and they're looking really at 2018, Charlton.
Yeah, and you're right. And the Royals, obviously, they had a great win. I still remember the cork bat when old boy came out. He was complaining. It was Frank. Was it who had the cork bat? George Brett, and he came out lying. He just kind of act like, what do you mean a cork bat? As these people don't have eyes, Big C. I do want to touch on St. Louis in the Central, the Cardinals. A great place to see a game over in St. Louis, 41-44, followed by Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh can be happy. They haven't won a Super Bowl in a while, but I guess their hockey team is the championship team in that city right now, and they're 39-46. And the Cincinnati Reds, even with a fairly new ballpark, they're cleaning up the bottom of that division at 37-48. In the East, where I looked like the Washington Nationals get a lot of publicity, led by Dusty Baker. They're a team that would probably challenge the Dodgers in the NLCS. They're 50-34, followed by the Braves. Also have a new stadium down in Atlanta. Atlanta must have a lot of money. Moonshine must be really big in the South, Big C. Everybody has a new stadium. Is the University of Georgia going to be next, Big C? Your thought? Are they getting a new stadium?
Well, Charlton, when you're building things, no one looks to see where the money's coming from. They just know that you're building something. And so the tax man is not bothering you at that point because you get to write it off later. So who knows where they're getting this money from to build it? I mean, you think about it. The Olympic Stadium was open in '96 where the Braves had been playing. Okay?
Yeah.
The Georgia Dome was 20 years old. So, to build two major franchise stadiums, Charlton, in a matter of 20 years of stadiums that really weren't outdated.
Yeah.
There's something that's going on that's magical in that area, and, Atlanta's really done a lot on the sports mecca. You think about the Mercedes Dome that you talked about, the Braves new, I think it's called SunTrust Field.
Yeah.
The College Football Hall of Fame to open up there a couple of years.
Oh, really?
A new, magnificent facility. So, I mean, it's just a great mecca for athletics, Charlton. They've drawn it all. I mean, you had the Olympics here in Atlanta in '96, and I believe it was the Falcons that choked in the Super Bowl last year. There's been a lot. They just got to get the Hawks going, in that town, and once they get the Hawks going, they're going to have a trifecta of teams.
Well, they need to build the Hawks a new arena too, Big C. They're saying, hey, we haven't won the championship either. Where's our new arena? I don't think it matters when you have that kind of money. Also, the Marlins, the Miami Marlins, 38-46. I think they did a travesty for baseball in a gorgeous city like Miami to build a brand new ballpark, and they make it a dome. It doesn't even look like it's inviting. I like the open air that Florida offers, but to put these good old boys in a dome, it hasn't really helped them win, Big C. I think when they were playing up at Joe Robbie, that's when they were in their last World Series, when that good old boy from Chicago reached out and tried to grab the foul ball, and I think it was Moses Alou that said, oh my God, I was going to catch that ball, and the good old boy took a lot of heat from the guys over in Chicago. But that's the last time Florida really had a challenged team when they played outdoors, Big C. And the Phillies, I don't know what's happened to them, 28-55, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Steve Bartman was that infamous man.
I didn't want to say his name, Big C. I'm sorry, Bartman.
Well, I think, they finally eased up after winning the World Series. But, the Marlins were fortunate enough to win 2 World Series during that run.
Yeah, outdoors.
And, Jim Leland, as the coach down there, and did a marvelous job with that organization. Had a lot of players that they brought in through free agency. They built a championship team.
Yeah.
But, one of the things about down there in South Florida is that you get a lot of rain.
Yeah.
And so they got a lot of rainouts that they had to suffer through, Charlton, and a lot of games that were played through rain. So that is a retractable roof dome that they have down there in Miami, which does allow some sunshine to come in. But, when you get in these inclement weather environments, Charlton, it behooves you to have it. You think about the dome in Milwaukee, the one in Houston.
Yeah.
I was shocked when the Braves built a new stadium that they didn't build a dome stadium with the amount of rain that they have down in the South.
Yeah.
So, baseball is natural and a game that's meant to be played outside, but they've put baseball in some cities that weren't meant for baseball originally.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of bad weather that forces a lot of rain outs and rain delays, Charlton.
Yeah, and I just want to finish out a few things just mentioning with the American League. We'll touch on that on the next program. We have the Houston Astros. They're actually 58-27, doing great, playing great baseball, followed by the Angels down in Los Angeles at 44-45. Now, Cleveland, your friends up north, Big C, 44-39 and first in the Central. Kansas City Royals 44-40. And then you look at the East, Boston Red Sox at 49-36, trying to get to the 50-win mark, followed by the Yankees at 44-39. So a lot of good things happening in the world of baseball. Coming up on the All-Star game. Should be exciting baseball for a lot of us to watch. Big C, I want to finish up on one more thing in the world of sports. We talk about people who sign autographs. And obviously there's a little bit of talk about Prescott having the autograph signing by some type of electronic device. I think one of the tennis players, a good old boy over at Wimbledon, signed someone's, I think he took off his leg, Big C. He had an artificial leg, and he had that signed. So the autograph, obviously everybody wants it. Everybody clamors about, should it be right or wrong to have people pay money for an autograph? I think the great Joe Montana wouldn't even sign a picture unless you slipped him a 20. And I mean like 20,000, Big C, not $20. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, why is it so relevant of how an autograph is signed?
Yeah.
Unless someone someone out trying to sell it and make money off of your image, Charlton, and that's what it's all about. When they're talking about authentication, what is the relevance? If you're not getting it for yourself, why are you getting it and trying to bootleg it off on someone else, Charlton? So here it is, the athlete, if there's any revenue ever to be made off his likeliness or his signature, it should all go to the athlete. But when we got all these trade shows, Charlton, where they're selling images, likeliness, and autographs of athletes, that's why so many athletes hesitate now on signing an autograph for anybody. They don't want to sign for kids like it was in growing up. You know, you could be at a baseball game and get an autograph all the time if you were down by the dugout or by the tunnel. Athletes would stop and sign. Now they don't, Charlton, because they know it's going to end up in some book show or some trade show that their image is being sold and they're not making the revenue off of it. Someone else is upselling this athlete's image. So for Zach Prescott to get this flack, and who's the flack coming from, Charlton?
Media people,
And why is it coming from the media? Why is the media so hard on these athletes and not so hard on politicians? If the media was paying attention to what they're doing, they're talking about repealing the Affordable Care Act. Why aren't the media riding the Affordable Care Act like they're riding Zach Prescott over a signature? Those signatures on the Affordable Care Act is what America and the media should be caring about, not some second-year quarterback down in Dallas.
Well, ironically, unfortunately, when they call it Obamacare, the good old boys down south want to repeal it. When they call it the Affordable Care Act, and they like that, it's the same thing, but sometimes it's how you pitch things. Big C, we've talked about college football and how it's one of my favorite sports in the history just because the college crowd in the environment, it's a different breed of cat. They really have fun at the games. I love traditional powers playing each other. I love the Florida State-Alabama matchup. I love USC, Texas. I even like Notre Dame and USC every year, no matter how good either one of those programs happen to be. Big C, we talked about some baseball. Clayton Kershaw matching Oral Hershiser. Can he lead the Dodgers to a World Series the way the great Oral Hershiser did, Big C, back in the days of Tommy Lasorda? Also, signing autographs. Joe Montana got 20 grand. Now guys get 20 grand a minute, it seems, with the way things are going in the world of sports. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the world of sports?
Well, Jonathan, I'm always looking to just great competition in the world of sports. As we say, we got the home run derby coming up. You know, that's the biggest thing right now coming up. You know, the mid-season break in baseball. And the winner of this mid-season break, Charlton, gets home field advantage in the playoffs in the World Series. So that's what's important. You know, it used to be that the All-Star game was just a showcase and no one really cared. But now, you know, the National League and the American League have an incentive. Because that team that normally has the home field advantage, Charlton, is a team that's most likely to go on and win the World Series.
Well, Big C, that's a very good point. I know that Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers, they're hoping for the NL to win the All-Star game this year. And speaking of winning, we want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We want to say there's never any excuse for domestic violence. If you know anybody going through trouble, just call 911. Whether it's a man or a woman, no one should have to deal with that garbage all on your own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports program, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.